The biggest what if question for the season is what Tyler Herro's role in this team should be. In and out of the lineup with injury, the Heat front office has to figure out if Herro should be a part of the team's future, or Wes, does it get harder to answer that given how Norm Powell has played this season?
David, it feels like the Heat are going to have to make a decision at some point. Tyler Herro or Norm Powell?
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Join the Cookie Gang, become an everydayer. That means subscribing, tuning in every day, Monday through Friday, and signing up for the Everydayer Club with the link in the show notes. I'm Wes Goldberg, host of Locked On NBA Daily and Real GM Radio. I'm here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. And today's episode, David, it's been a long time coming. It's a deep dive into what the Heat should do with Tyler Herro, a hot topic for a long time here in Miami. We're doing it now because Tyler Herro has been ruled out for tonight's game against the Trailblazers. We already know that he's not expected to play during this road trip, so another 2 games after this one in Portland. Herro will have missed, after this game, 34 of Miami's 45 games so far this season and counting. And it's because it's unclear when he's going to come back. And when he does come back, it's unclear when he'll stay healthy, right? And so I think it is fair to wonder whether the Heat should just bring him off the bench this season just to get some continuity. We're going to talk about a lot of Tyler Herro related topics here. We'll start with the short-term part of this of, what does it look like when Tyler Herro does eventually come back? And then maybe we'll get into some long-term stuff, including what the Heat should do as the trade deadline comes up. But, assuming that Herro will come back at some point, and he's on this roster, David, we talked recently about the fluctuating lineups and how that's been kind of an issue for the Heat, the lack of consistency with what the starting lineup is. And Tyler Herro has just been out with this with a toe and now all these other a rib now, and he just can't stay on the court. And I just wonder, are you better off just bringing him off the bench, not because he's not a starting caliber player, just because he's so hurt that maybe that's a way to build some continuity into this thing?
It's kind of hard to answer that because we really just haven't seen what Tyler is supposed to bring to this team. Like, we haven't seen what the fully realized version of this roster could be because he's been so in and out of the lineup. And even once he was returning, then it was everybody else kind of missing time, him trying to be acclimated and figure his role out on the fly. It just hasn't ever really manifested the way that so many of us expected it to. Like at the start of the season, we thought he would be the one constant, written and Sharpie, right? When we talked about the starting lineups for the season, we had no idea what it would be like. Probably Andrew Wiggins, probably Davion Mitchell. Who knows what Norm Powell's role would be, etc.
No,
but we knew that it was Tyler Herro and Bam
Wiggins
Adebayo.
written in Sharpie.
Yeah, that's right. And after that, it's just we've never really been able to see what Tyler's role could be. So if you look at what this team has been able to accomplish, and we've talked about it recently, as you said, the inconsistency of this group and not knowing where you're going to get your offense from on a night-to-night basis, I don't know that Tyler is able to function alongside that starting lineup. Like it should work on paper because when you have another elite scorer like Tyler playing alongside a guy like Norm Powell and being complemented defensively by guys like Wiggins, Bam, etc., they should be good enough to function. Like Herro should be good enough to thrive in those roles. And yet it hasn't worked out that way. It's always been kind of, we're not really sure exactly who should get the ball in certain situations. Tyler and Norm, the chemistry hasn't been there immediately. And it just hasn't had enough time to really flesh itself out. So I'm torn. And my gut tells me that it would probably be easier to bring him off the bench. But at the same time, I feel like the best version of this team has to include Tyler in the starting lineup. You don't overthink it. You put your best 5 out there, and if that's the case, Tyler's got to be a part of that group. And I think he's earned that right. But he's got to be able to stay healthy in order for you to develop any kind of ongoing or continuing consistency. Like if he's brought in over the next, I don't know, 5-10 games, let's say, however long this latest injury takes him out, you put him in there and you're working towards something. You might go through some bumps along the way, but you know that come March, come April, and especially if you do make the playoffs, you want to have this version with Tyler in there, and you want to have enough of a sample size where you go, okay, we know this works. We know what to do in these certain situations, whether it's late game situations, what your offense looks like, especially in the fourth quarter, how you play alongside a guy like Norm Powell, especially with a trade deadline looming too. You've got so many decisions to make about other ancillary pieces on this roster. You've got to know what you're going to get out of Tyler Herro. So I think, again, you don't overthink it. Tyler's one of the better players on this roster. You got to put him out there.
To me, this has nothing to do with talent. It actually really does very little to do with fit, right? I think some of the fit concerns about Tyler Herro in that starting lineup are way overstated. The numbers bear it out. It's fine when he plays alongside Norm Powell and Wiggins and Bam and Davion Mitchell. That's Miami's best lineup, right? With Mitchell, Herro, Powell, Wiggs, Adebayo, they're outscoring teams by 12.6 points per 100 possessions, according to Cleaning the Glass. That's Miami's best high usage lineup. Just is. All the other ones are not good. The Bam Ware lineup, not as good, based on everything that we've seen so far this season. Now, the only reason this is even a question is, okay, let's say he does come back. Does he have to get sidelined again because this toe and this ankle thing is just lingering? I mean, right now it's the rib that's the new one, but he's also listed on the injury report with the toe injury. It just seems to be something all the time, and I agree with you, David. You're 100% right. The best version of this team is a team where Tyler Herro is starting alongside your other four best players. There's zero question about that. The question is whether or not he could be on the court long enough to develop more chemistry and to get to that point where this starting lineup becomes a bona fide strength for this team, because as good as they've been on the court together, the sample has been so small because of Herro's injuries that you can't reliably go out and say, hey, the Heat have a great starting five. We think they do based on the sample that we have so far. We just don't see it that much because Tyler Herro is hurt all the time. The other question then is and we can leave that open-ended. I don't really care. I think it's fair to just leave it there in terms of, hey, that's a tough decision to make. If you do replace Tyler Herro in the starting lineup, the other question is who? Who do you replace him with? And I think most people will just assume Kel'el Ware. I think it's safe to say, regardless of what I or the people in the YouTube comments think, Eric Spoelstra is not starting Kel'el Ware next to Bam Adebayo. It feels like that ship has sailed at this point, at least for now. And so then I think it becomes a perimeter player. And to me, the obvious one is Pelle Larsson.
100%.
Right? And do you replace Herro with Larsson? And then you look at that lineup, Mitchell, Powell, Wiggins, Adebayo, and then Larsson in place of Herro on a smaller sample. That group, that starting, that five-man lineup is outscoring teams by 25.5 points per 100 possessions. It's not a lot. It's not a large sample, but it is something. And I think you and I watch these games where Powell Larsson starts and agree, his connective ability, his kind of glue guy-ness, his do-it stuffiness, all that stuff, it does work.
Absolutely. He's less on ball. He's less dependent. But he gets his opportunities and he makes the most of them. He's there in transition baskets. He's forcing turnovers. He's drawing charges. He's getting under people's skin. He's doing all the things that, honestly, that's not necessarily the Tyler's strength. Tyler's strength is give him the ball, let him go to work, stretch the floor, etc. In a way that Pelle can't. But Pelle does all the other things that kind of help that starting lineup. It's a really tough call. I don't know if it's the right move to bench Pelle. I would almost think that maybe you bench Davion Mitchell instead, to be honest with you. I don't know if that's the right
Herro
call
in the starting lineup.
Yeah, Herro, Pelle, Powell. That works. It should, in theory.
Pelle had 9 assists the other day. He's not a natural point guard, but he told us during media day, like, he played a lot more on the ball in Eurobasket, and he learned a lot doing those things. I don't know. It is interesting. I do think that Pelle is good in either coming off the bench or starting. That I honestly wouldn't worry too much about it. But if you were going to replace Herro, to me, starting Pelle in Herro's place is more about benching Herro than it is starting Pelle. If that makes sense, right? Like, you're making the decision of, this is not hero season in terms of staying healthy. We just can't afford to have our starting five be this inconsistent. So we're just going to go with the most consistent group we have. And so we'll go ahead and start Powell Larson. But
has Spo ever done that? Like, I mean, I know that Tyler is not necessarily of the caliber of player where the team has to bend to accommodate him. And that's not what I'm talking about either. But typically a starting caliber player keeps that role even when he comes back from injury. Like Eric Spoelstra's not the type to say, "Yo, he's back from injury, but we got to slowly work him in there." Maybe you have one game. We saw Tyler did come off the bench, and then the following game back in that starting lineup, for better or for worse. So, how is it even really a question as far as whether or not Tyler's
the
even
closest thing is D Wade, right? Like the last stint with Dwayne Wade is he wasn't available every single night, and so they brought him off the bench as a sixth man. And to your point, he also did it earlier this season with Tyler Herro. It's a great question. It is maybe not the most important question though, because if they do decide to bench Tyler Herro, actually, regardless of what they decide to do with Tyler Herro, should they just consider trading him before the trade deadline? We're going to talk about that next.
Today's episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, well, you meet with a local TurboTax expert in person, or you can connect online, and they handle everything from W-2s to self-employment forms, and they work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and then get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver, and it gives real peace of mind knowing that an expert is handling it. And for a limited time, you have all your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150. That's all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, you just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen of the day. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. The trade deadline is a couple of weeks away when it comes to Tyler Herro, bench, start, whatever it is. He's been injury prone for a lot of his career, and he's up for an extension this summer. I'm just going to ask it straight up, David. Should they just punt on the decision, whether or not to start, bench, whatever, to extend him, all these things? Should they just punt on all of this and at least shop him before the trade deadline and try to maximize his value?
Has his value ever been lower than what it is? Like, I don't know.
Not for a while.
Yeah. I think when you look at the breadth of his career, even when he struggled during his sophomore season, based on what we saw as a rookie, I think his value was still higher because we've seen some flashes as a rookie, and then you can always bank on mystery box A, the potential that maybe he hadn't tapped into. Then he's an all-star last year. That value was as high as it's ever going to be. And this was the first offseason and during his career in which he wasn't involved in any kind of trade rumors or any kind of guess or possible trade scenarios or anything like that. So now I don't know that the team is actively shopping him or should actively shop him, because it's just, this isn't about what Tyler is. It's just about what it is, what he isn't. And what he isn't that superstar. And I don't know that you're going to get that value for Tyler Herro. If anything, would you include him in a deal for a superstar? I think the answer to that is clearly yes. Again, you want a player like Tyler Herro if he's your second or third option, and that's fine. But that's not the case with this roster as it's currently comprised. So if you're going to look at building the roster the right way and you have to move Tyler in order to get that superstar player, then yes. Otherwise, I don't know what team is going to look to acquire a player like Tyler Herro, given his injury history and his potential that kind of play off each other, and knowing that an extension is down the pipe and it's coming up and it's going to be an expensive one. And so it's a risk for any team trying to take on that player. And I don't know that Tyler is the kind of player either that any team can. He's not a guy that you can just assimilate in right away. His offense certainly, I think, is a strong suit and a skill that most teams would want on the roster. But I don't know that he's going to be an easy fit for a team that makes that kind of acquisition. So it's a challenge, and I don't see that any team is really looking to acquire a player like Tyler at this point during the trade deadline.
Yeah, and because of the injury problems this year, you would want to see as much of Tyler Herro as possible if you were a team trading for him to make a decision on that extension, right? And you don't have to necessarily make a decision on the extension because he's not a free agent, right? He could just go into next year, play out his contract, and then you determine some sort of extension at that point, or just a new contract when he enters free agency in a couple of years. But you would still like to at least have as much information as possible if you were a team trading for Tyler Herro, right? And so because the injuries, that obviously blunts the ability to do that. When he's on the court, he's been very good this year. He's averaging 22 points per game on almost 50% shooting overall. The three-point shot is still there and still a weapon. The rebounding is still there as a weapon. His playmaking, his assist numbers are down, but I don't read too much into that. I mean, he's only played in 11 games so far. His playmaking is still a real thing. And I think there are a lot of teams out there that could use a guy like Tyler Herro. But like you said, there's a lot of other factors in terms of the extension, the health, the fact that defensively he's not an easy guy to scheme around, right? We've seen Eric Spoelstra go to great lengths in terms of pre-switching and hiding him and all these kinds of things defensively that you're going to have to get used to if you're the team that's bringing that in and adopting those issues. And offensively, yeah, he is a guy who wants to be on the ball, right? And if you have another on-ball guy, there's potential clashing there and skill overlap that you have to at least consider. So I have my answer for this, and I don't think it's at all surprising. I think the answer is no. I don't think that you trade Tyler Herro between now and the February 5th trade deadline. I don't think you even shop him. I don't think it's a thing that you do. You don't want to, and that doesn't mean that you never trade Tyler Herro. To your point, David, like if you want to go upgrade and go get that number one option, the Heat have already told Tyler Herro a couple years ago, we're gonna trade you if we can go get that kind of player. Just so you know, like that could potentially happen here. That won't be a surprise if that happens. I don't think you could trade Tyler Herro in a package that's not that, and I don't think you're trying to trade him now just to trade him and avoid like awkward extension talks or try to just avoid the issue of do you start him, do you play him with Norm Powell, all that. I don't think you do that, if only because his value's never been lower. And if you're going to trade somebody like Tyler Herro, you want to trade him from a position of strength, not a position of weakness. And right now, if you were to trade Herro, you would not be maximizing his value. He has more use to remaining on this team for the rest of the season than he would being traded over the next couple of weeks while he's injured. Because you're not going to get great value for Tyler Herro at that point. You're not going to get, I don't know what kind of value you'll get overall from him at any point, but I know you won't get the most value if you trade him over the next couple of weeks, as opposed to if you were to trade him potentially even in the offseason when he was extension eligible. And even at that point, another team could bring him in and say, hey, we're going to wait on the extension, or maybe we feel good about our scouting department and we think we know what you're all about. And then the obvious thing here, and the real reason why, to me, it's an absolute no, is because you need him for Giannis. If you're going to trade for Giannis over the summer, Tyler Herro is a central part of that. Because a few different reasons. Terry Rozier's contract is off the books, so you don't have that to get up to that $60 million Giannis number. Andrew Wiggins could be off the books depending on what he does with his player option, so you just don't know. That's sort of over here. You can't count on what Wiggins' salary is going to be. Bam, you're going to want to keep, presumably, in a Giannis trade, so you're not going to want to move off of that salary. And then Norm Powell, his contract also expires if he doesn't sign an extension between now and the end of the season. So he's not an option to move in that trade. You need Tyler Herro's contract just for the numbers, just for the salary matching. Not to mention the fact that if you're Milwaukee, you could be like, okay, hometown kid, we can maybe sell a trade package built around Tyler Herro and a bunch of draft picks for if we're forced to move off of Giannis. We could do a lot worse than that. You are not trading Tyler Herro just to avoid problems and awkward conversations. You need to keep Tyler Herro on your books, because if Giannis comes available and you punted on Herro for a first-round pick and salary filler, you're going to feel really dumb in the offseason if that happens.
Yeah, it's a tough call, but it's a necessary one. Like the value for him now at this point, it would be pennies on the dollar, significantly less. And so and I hate to say it, but as a trade asset, he has much more value if it's going to be included in a superstar package for a guy like Giannis or anybody else. So it's just, you have to, that's why I think eventually you have to start him. Like that's the best.
Yeah.
It's a commitment to him. It's a commitment to this season. It's a commitment to this roster and saying, look, we're going to put the best guys out there, figure it out. I'm going to put you in a position where you can thrive and make the most of it one way or the other. And so to that end, almost like I don't know. Again, we're talking about rearranging the starting lineup and other trade decisions and things of that sort. Is it time to trade Andrew Wiggins? Is it time to trade Norm Powell? There's a lot to get to there, but I think a lot of fans would probably agree that if you're going to commit to your best lineup, at least the best potential lineup, you probably have to include Tyler, and you probably have to include Kel'el Ware as well.
I don't know about the Ware thing, but it's not even. I'm just
You kind of have to.
I don't know.
I know the numbers don't bear it out.
Potential lineup. No, to your point, the best potential lineup. Yes, probably. Right, probably. Their best lineup is the one with Herro in it. So what you're saying is like, hey, the best lineup is with Tyler Herro and Norm Powell. Like that's not like a hot take, Like
No.
their best lineup of their best heavy minutes lineup so far this season is the one with Herro, Powell, Mitchell, Wiggs, and Bam. So you're absolutely right when you say that. Now, I agree with you. I think you have to, when Tyler Herro comes back, I think you have to start him, and I don't think you're looking to actively shop him. Now, if Giannis says something to Milwaukee between now and the trade deadline, which has not been the case so far, then everything changes, right? But I don't, in terms of putting Herro on the trade block, that's very different than including him in a Giannis trade, and I think that distinction is also very important. All right, those are the short-term concerns. We're going to zoom out in the next segment because I do think there's a long-term decision that the Heat are going to have to make at some point in the near to long-term future here. The front office could be forced to make a decision between Tyler Herro and Norm Powell. We'll talk about the pros and the cons of both sides after this.
New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think, well, there's got to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. And that's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number. Nothing gets missed. That's how simple Quo makes everything. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, and that makes replying faster and more personal. It works right from your phone or computer, and you can even keep your existing number. And Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps, so details never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise that Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen of the day. We talked about some of the short-term issues. We're going to zoom ahead. We're going to look at the long-term decision. There might be a decision looming for this front office between Tyler Herro and Norm Powell, and I do wonder who the Heat would prefer to have for the next couple of years. Now, before we even get into this, David, I don't want to overstate this. This is not, again, an immediate thing. This is not even a thing that the front office needs to be thinking about, right? They have much more important, more immediate concerns right now. But for us as podcasters, I do think it's at least interesting to bring this up. Powell versus Herro. At some point, you're probably going to have to choose one of them. It doesn't mean you have to make that decision between now and the trade deadline. It doesn't even really mean you have to make it this summer when they're both extension eligible, despite what I think a lot of people think. But over the next couple of years, at some point, this decision is looming as something that's out there. I look at the pros and cons, right? On one hand, Norm Powell is having a better season than Tyler Herro. I think based on a lot of things that we've seen so far, you would prefer to have this version of Norm Powell than this version of Tyler Herro. That said, Tyler Herro is a lot younger than Norm Powell. He's a half decade younger than Norm Powell. That matters when you're talking about next contract, right? I think on the flip side, Powell, I think is clearly an easier fit and more versatile offensively and defensively, which, is a whole other thing. But in terms of, we don't really know what our team is going to look like over the next couple of years. Are we going to make a major trade? Are we going to shake things up? Powell, you could just see fitting into a lot of different versions of a Heat roster. Whereas if it's Herro, we kind of know the way that you got to play and how Herro wants to play. That said, Tyler Herro is a better playmaker, a better passer than Norm Powell. I think that does matter. We've seen that be a big boost to this offense at times. Like I mentioned before, Powell, not as bad defensively, so you have to cover for him a lot less on that end. That matters, especially, I think, in today's NBA, where two-way play has never been more important. So that's a big thing. And then when it comes to the extensions, they're both extension eligible this summer. Powell's extension eligible right now, and Herro's extension eligible this summer. So you do have decisions looming with both of these guys, even if they're independent of each other. But at some point, it feels like that decision might not be so independent of each other. Did I miss anything there in terms of the pros and the cons for each side?
No, I don't think so. It sums up pretty well. And yet, honestly, I mean, if I give my take here,
Yeah.
I think it's a kind of a no-brainer. I think you keep Tyler. Like it just, if this was 2 years ago, it'd be a different conversation. And I think you can lean into Norm and this version of Norm 100%. I don't know any organization that can count on Norm continuing to produce this way beyond maybe a season more. Like, what's the window for Norm to keep playing at this level? A year, two? I love what Powell's done this season. And I don't know that any organization can make that choice and say, yeah, he's a part of our long-term future. It's Norm Powell. Like, I don't need to denigrate him in any way. It's just he's never been that person. He's never been that player. He's getting older. And yeah, he's continuing to have these career seasons for a second consecutive season. And yet, I don't know how realistic it is that you can count on that moving forward, that you can continue to build knowing, oh, okay, we're going to get this 23-point, 24-point per game production from Norm Powell for the rest of his career. That's not realistic. That's not how players go. I mean, I don't know. It's players are staying better for longer, and I can appreciate that as they continue to age. They're still able to be productive, good players. Like we just saw DeMar DeRozan. He's still a threat, however limited he might be. His game hasn't changed much over the course of his career, and he still is productive in that role. Could Norm just be that guy, and maybe you're punting unnecessarily on a guy who could be productive for another 5-6 seasons in Miami? I don't know. It's a tough call, but I just think that if the Heat have to operate with a certain regard, you probably want to keep Tyler over Norm Powell.
Powell's going to be 33 by the end of this season.
That's a hell of a risk.
Yeah, and he has been so good this season, that there's no way to, like, there's so many stats from him. I mean, The Athletic had this piece on Norm Powell this morning. The fact that the Heat, this is from that piece, the Heat score 127.2 points per 100 possessions on passes, shots, turnovers, and fouls out of Norm Powell's isolations this season. It's the highest number in a single season since Second Spectrum began tracking the stat in 2013. He's an elite isolation player. When he ISOs, the Heat offense is awesome. Awesome. Historically great. But you don't pay extensions based on what you're doing now. You pay extensions based on what you think the player will do when that contract kicks in, which is why the Heat didn't pay Jimmy Butler, right? You don't pay players for past performance. You pay players for the new contract, for what the work they'll do while on the new contract. And if you don't think that Norm Powell is going to stay like this at 33, 34, 35, 36 years old, then that does become a tough decision. We saw the Clippers make this decision last summer. Now, the Clippers probably made this decision a year too early. And it doesn't mean that they made the wrong decision either, right?
Right.
And for the Heat, even if Powell can continue to do this for another year, 2 years, if you're going to sign him to a 4-year extension or something like that, which I have no reporting on this, I'm just saying stuff.
Right.
But if you're going to sign him to a big 3-4 year extension, how does that look on the back end of it? Whereas Tyler Herro is 26 years old, we kind of know who he is. That's not necessarily a great thing, but at the same time, we kind of know who he is. And I kind of think I know who Tyler Herro is going to be between the ages 26 and 30. And that's a good player who might make another all-star team during that stretch. That's a good player. And so, yeah, I think if you have to make the decision, the other part about this too, David, is I think right now, if you were to make this decision, let's say, for example, over the next couple of weeks before the deadline, I think Norm Powell has a lot more value than Tyler Herro does. Because if you're a contender out there, you could say, we have 1 year of Norm Powell. He's really good right now. We'll throw you a first-round pick and a decent asset to get Norm Powell on our roster to make a stretch run. And if that's the case, that might also be a no-brainer for the Heat, because then you say, if we're gonna try to trend younger and build around these younger players, then maybe we don't really have a use for Powell. Maybe that draft pick is a little bit more useful for us. It can't just be any pick. I'm not saying you have to go out there and trade Powell for sure, but if some team comes out here with a really good offer, you have to at least think about it.
Yeah, I'd say that would certainly be the case for Miami. I just don't know what the kind of offer would be like. That's a tough one, man. Like I wonder which player has the most trade value of this roster. Like you bring up a good point, and I hadn't thought about it. Like Norm is a rental because of the contract extension question looming, but what a heck of a rental. Like that's a guy that really is much easier to accommodate. Like we just talked about Tyler and his fit on another team. That would be a little shaky or a little bit more difficult to implement. A guy like Norm, plug and play, and you're plugging in a heck of a player, a guy who can really shoot, who can thrive in any surroundings. Like as you said, even in that piece by The Athletic, like his ability to morph from what Ty Lue ran in with the Clippers last year to what Eric Spoelstra has done this year, he's gotten even better. So that's a very low risk, high reward acquisition for a team because he's gonna, if he thrives this year, he could coast to a title. And if that's the case, then his value is going to be higher than ever, and he'll leave as a free agent. Nothing ventured. You don't give up too much for a guy like Norm, and you get a hell of a lot of something back. So it's a really interesting question for a lot of teams out there, and Miami has to entertain it because if you give up on Norm, you're kind of saying, okay, we're accepting the fact that Tyler is what he is, and he's going to carry us or help carry us to the best of his ability for the rest of the season. I think we saw that show last year, and it wasn't particularly good. But trading Norm and maybe even trading a guy like Andrew Wiggins as well, that's more about making sacrifices in the short term and then acquiring as many potential assets as possible, knowing that during the offseason, you're going to go all in for said superstar.
And for example, right, like what if Detroit calls and says, we'll give you Tobias Harris is expiring and a 2027 first-round pick. Now, that first-round pick from the Pistons isn't going to be good because the Pistons are going to be awesome for the next few years.
Right.
But getting that 2027 pick unlocks those other picks that if you're the Heat, now all of a sudden we go from 2 tradable firsts to 4 tradable firsts. That really helps us with Giannis. What if the Thunder call?
Sure.
And they say, we'll give you Alex Caruso. And like they have $1 million first round. Like we'll give you 3 first-round picks. Like what? It doesn't matter to us. We don't need these things. We're trying to move. We'll give you
we're trying to shed them on purpose.
Yeah, one good one and maybe a couple of not so good ones. But we're going to give you ammunition here to go get Giannis or the next superstar player that becomes available. If you're the Heat, that's a really hard offer to say no to. And those are the kinds of offers that come in for Norm, but not necessarily, as we talked about earlier, for Tyler Herro, right? And so I do think that there's an interesting thing happening here. But on the same side of this, if none of this stuff happens between now and the trade deadline and you go into the offseason with both Norm and Herro on your roster, there's another world where Herro is involved in a Giannis trade potentially, and then you retain Norm. Because now you're not looking about getting younger. Now your window is wide open because you just traded for Giannis. And in that case, it's Giannis, Bam, Norm. And at that point, then Tyler Herro is the odd man out and not Norm Powell. So like sliding doors all over the place. It's like a carnival, David.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I don't even know that that's the first domino to fall here. It feels like the buzz about Wiggs is probably loudest. And that being the case, I would imagine he's going to be the first decision that the Heat front office has to make.
It's
they
just
have to make
the
a choice,
Lakers, right? It's just the Lakers that I've heard, and the Lakers are going to move a first round pick in the like an out first round pick with everything that's going for Wiggins. I like Wiggins, but come on, like they're really going to do that? I don't know.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
Maybe
a topic for another podcast.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in today to Locked On Heat. Make sure that you subscribe, follow Locked On Heat so you get all the latest episodes. We'll be back tomorrow with our post-game reaction to tonight's game against the Portland Trailblazers. Follow Locked On Heat on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and X. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Heat ad-free, plus member-only Discord access and more. Head to LockedOnHeat.supercast.com to join the club. Talk to you soon.